Some say money is the root of all evil, but it's also at the core of a lot of great characters in shows and movies. Whether they're rolling in dough or hunting for quick cash, money defines a lot of our favorite fictional characters. That is why in this video we're going to highlight the characters that are much richer and poorer than you'd expect. Richest, Cosmo Kramer. Cosmo Kramer filled a variety of odd jobs and partook in several money-making schemes over the course of Seinfeld, but he never really had steady work. In spite of that, though, Kramer could afford an apartment in the Upper West Side of New York City, which today costs about $4,158 per month in rent. In the episode The Shoes, Jerry does reveal that Kramer received a large inheritance earlier in his life. Even if most of Kramer's past is shrouded in mystery, this could be why he always has the time and money to go on his various misadventures. After all, it's a lot easier to take a chance on being an actor or underwear model when you have a financial safety net. Peter Griffin. The Griffin family is perpetually in an odd place with money. There are way too many storylines to count where the Griffins are on the brink of financial collapse, but just as many gags where Peter has an expensive gadget. Sure, they're renting their house because they can't afford to buy one, but Peter also purchased a helicopter that would have cost at least $200 grand. The only possible explanation for this is that Peter Griffin somehow has an obscene amount of money, but is utterly terrible at managing his wealth. Credit to the Quahog toy factory, fishing industry, and brewery, though, for paying their employees enough for Peter to engage in these shenanigans. Harry Potter. Harry Potter isn't just the boy who lived. He's the boy who lived in luxury. Even if he started the series living under his relatives' abuse, his introduction to the world of magic would also introduce him to his parents' fortune. Conservative estimates value Harry's vault at Gringotts Wizarding Bank at around $1.2 million. Maybe being a millionaire at the age of 11 was the real reason that Voldemort was so jealous of Harry? The young wizard having a ridiculous amount of money also shakes up the story quite a bit. After all, this money more or less makes Harry the rich jock you went to high school with who became a cop after graduation. Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump has a net worth in the ballpark of $5.7 billion. But the iconic character probably doesn't focus on his bank account all that much. After all, he was pretty indifferent when he learned that his shrimping empire meant that he'd never have to worry about money again. So long as he has enough to look after himself and little Forrest, though, it's clear that Gump is happy with his modest life. While there are a lot of characters on this list who might not deserve their money, Forrest Gump deserves every penny and more. After all, he is the nicest, most inspirational man to experience every major event of the 60s and early 70s, Richie Rich. A lot of fictional characters amassed a fortune over the course of their many exploits. For Richie Rich, though, being rich is literally his whole deal. It's his name, twice. Being born into the rich family entitles Richie to a $5.8 billion fortune. Thankfully, though, the rich family didn't let that money go to their son's head. Richie has a pretty strong set of morals and is more interested in using his wealth to help his friends than hoarding it. Although it is still a little concerning that a child has more money than he'd ever be able to spend in his lifetime. Then again, Richie is such a good kid that he'll probably warm up to the idea of wealth redistribution as he grows older. Adrian Veidt. Adrian Veidt, also known as Ozymandias from The Watchmen, has an estimated fortune of $7 billion. That might seem like a lot, but he needed every penny to become a superhero, and then enact a villainous plot to create an artificial world peace. In the Watchmen movie, his plan centers on uniting hostile nations by turning them against the all-powerful Dr. Manhattan. Although in the comic, he unites the world by turning everyone against a fourth wall-breaking giant space squid. Either way, it's clear that Veidt isn't a good dude, and that he could have made a far better use of his fortune. Jabba the Hutt. Jabba the Hutt has an estimated worth of $8.4 billion, which tracks with him being one of the scummiest tyrants in the galaxy. This crime boss is as evil as he is slimy. He transforms those who go against him into literal statues and sends ruthless assassins against those with wavering loyalty. While Jabba may be a barely mobile slug man thing, it's clear that he has the money to send countless dangerous villains out on his behalf. It's a good thing Leia took Jabba out when she did. Maybe now some of that obscene wealth can go to the struggling moisture farmers of Tatooine, and that they'll be able to afford regular colored milk. Nah, who are we kidding? They love that blue stuff. Gordon Gekko. Speaking of slime balls, Gordon Gekko amassed a fortune of about $8.5 billion thanks to his insider trading schemes. The various other illegal activities that contribute to Gekko's wealth makes it clear that he's both one of the richest and worst characters in fiction. As a shady stockbroker, making money by any means necessary is Gekko's job, and he's damn good at it. He's utterly obsessed with gaining more money, power, and influence in society. It's a shame, but Gekko really is a testament to how morally bankrupt people can quickly become the richest financially. With all that money, though, you'd think that he could afford a less skeezy haircut. But the look does suit him. Bruce Wayne. There's money, and then there's Batman money. Coming in at a whopping $9.2 billion, we all know that Bruce Wayne has Batman money. While he may have been born into this fortune, at least he's making the most of it through his crime-fighting antics. Bruce needs every cent of this money to develop the weapons and technology to keep Gotham and the Earth safe from all manner of superpowered foes. Manufacturing bat-shaped boomerangs ain't cheap, and neither is a car that's basically a tank with a motorcycle inside of it. Sure, a lot of this stuff boils down to superhero toys and isn't super necessary all the time, but you can't blame Wayne for having a bit of fun as he saves the day. Jay Gatsby. In today's money, Jay Gatsby from The Great Gatsby would have about $11.2 billion. Although no one is quite sure how Gatsby lined his coffers, the prevailing theory is that he was involved in organized crime during Prohibition. Even with this kind of wealth, Gatsby remains a tragic figure. All the money in the world couldn't buy him a place in high society where those with generational wealth only saw him as an outsider. Nor could it truly earn him the love of a woman he saw as his only true path to success and happiness. Gatsby had it all and was miserable, proving once and for all that material goods are no substitute for emotional well-being. Tony Stark. While money can't buy happiness, it can buy someone in an Iron Man suit, or at least allow Tony Stark to make a whole bunch of them. Tony Stark has an estimated wealth of about $12.4 billion, and this hero knows how to have fun with it. When he's not flying around in his super suit, he's driving race cars or talking with his AI butler. Sure, he's had a couple of mishaps with his money, like building Ultron or accidentally selling weapons to bad actors. At the end of the day, though, Tony Stark uses his vast fortune to make the world a better place for everyone and protect people from various alien threats. Mr. Burns. C. Montgomery Burns is one of the greediest fictional characters ever created. As The Simpsons largely lampoons traditional sitcoms and the culture that inspired them, it makes sense that Burns would be an impossibly greedy Scrooge. With an estimated net worth of $16.8 billion, he's easily the richest man in Springfield. Homer's boss isn't happy with just that, though. He still plots various schemes to make or save money. Like the time he stole an oil deposit from the town, or when he schemed up a way to avoid giving his employees dental benefits. Altogether, Mr. Burns is the perfect example of cartoon greed and villainy. Oliver Daddy Warbucks. Oliver Warbucks is a defense contractor, which means that he makes money hand over fist so long as the US is engaged in some kind of violent conflict. With a village of employees and an estimated $36.2 billion net worth, it's no wonder he thinks he can pull off the nickname Daddy. Ugh. While he is pretty self-absorbed in his introduction, eventually Orphan Annie does make him see the error of his ways, or at least has him start being nicer towards people. He is still a war profiteer, which does come with some concerning ethical implications. He also never formally adopted Annie, which seems kind of weird and more than a little mean. Carlisle Cullen. Over the course of a lifetime, conservative investments can go a long way towards paying for retirement. When you're a 400-year-old vampire, those same investments can make you a multi-billionaire. If you saw any of the Twilight films, you know that the Cullens are a pretty rich family of vampires. Estimates put Carlisle Cullen's total net worth somewhere in the ballpark of $46 billion. With an infinite amount of time, you don't have to be the savviest investor to start stockpiling money before too long. Hell, even just putting every $5 bill you get as change into a savings account will turn into big money after a few decades. Scrooge McDuck. The wealthiest fictional character ever conceived, Scrooge McDuck has an estimated net worth of $65.4 billion. The greatest champion of the American dream, Scrooge went from a broke Scottish immigrant to a titan of industry. In an effort to be smarter than the smarties and tougher than the toughies, he became the wealthiest duck alive. Of course, his many profitable adventures definitely supplemented all of his hard work and careful investing. While Scrooge did become a bit miserly in his wealth, Huey, Dewey, and Louie did manage to soften him up shortly after moving into his mansion. There are a lot of sweet moments in DuckTales, and Scrooge learning to love his family more than money is one of the sweetest. The poorest. Pacha from The Emperor's New Groove. The Emperor's New Groove is considered one of the best Disney animated movies largely because of its memorable characters and incredible cast. Pacha, who's voiced by John Goodman, is a Peruvian villager who has to help Emperor Cusco turn back into a human after he's transformed into a llama. Pacha acts as a mentor to Cusco in this movie and helps the Emperor become a better person. It's a bit cliche that a poor villager would be the one to give the selfish Emperor a new perspective on life, but it's a heartwarming cliche. Pacha may not be wealthy, but he's rich in character and can survive falling off a waterfall, so those are two things money can't buy. The Weasleys from Harry Potter. The Weasleys are easily one of the biggest, most supportive, and most loving families in Harry Potter, but they're far from the wealthiest. Ron's time at Hogwarts is punctuated by his frequent use of hand-me-down clothes and wizarding supplies. Even the Weasley household is defined by its many occupants having to use the limited space as economically as possible. Between their more limited capital and history of studying Muggles, it's no surprise that the aristocratic members of Wizarding Society look down on the Weasleys. However, the viewers and Harry Potter know that the Weasleys are just about the best family anybody could be a part of. Charlie Bucket from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. How do you let the audience instantly know that a character is struggling financially? Name them after something you use when you clean. That's right, Charlie Mop. Charlie Bucket is extremely poor and lives with his parents and 4 grandparents in a little wooden house. When he finds a golden ticket, though, he's able to go on a tour of the fabled Willy Wonka chocolate factory. Inside, his good character and quick thinking leads to him becoming an eccentric chocolate maker's successor. Of course, it helps that every other kid who attended the tour was an utter brat. Good things don't always happen to good people in real life. That is why Charlie Bucket's rise to riches is so heartwarming and just such an enduring story. Katniss Everdeen. Katniss Everdeen, the girl on fire, was struggling to get by in her impoverished home of District 12. With few other options, she takes to illegally hunting small game for food, and as a way to support her mother and younger sister financially. After she wins the Hunger Games, things start to look up for Katniss and her family, although the victory and further scrutiny from President Snow led to a host of other problems. Katniss persevered, though, and that's a big part of the reason why she's such an inspirational figure to so many people. Although she doesn't really finish with riches, she did lead the fight against tyranny after a lifetime of suffering under it. JD from Scrubs. JD had to overcome a lot during his time at Sacred Heart Hospital. He suffered under his own insecurities, his ego, mean coworkers, and the diabolical janitor. However, JD's biggest adversary in the series was easily student loan debt. In the early 2000s, when the show kicks off, the average student loan debt for medical students was $140,000. This crushing debt forced JD to moonlight at other hospitals, drive a scooter rather than a car, and even live in a tent for a while. He gets through it all, though, and by the end of the series, he's an accomplished and respected medical professional. Charlie from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Charlie does not live very well. He's sharing a rundown apartment with his maybe dad, Frank Reynolds. He has to eat cat food so he can fall asleep, and he only owns like a half a dozen shirts. He works as what's essentially a janitor for Patty's Pub, and since the pub is a hair's breadth from closing, there's a chance he isn't even getting paid. In spite of everything, though, Charlie tries to make the most of his life. He genuinely enjoys some parts of his job and gleefully takes part in his own harebrained schemes and those of the rest of the gang. He's also invented kitten mittens. Nobody who's too beaten down by life could create kitten mittens. Carrie Bradshaw from Sex and the City. Carrie from Sex and the City was a compulsive shopper, and like a lot of people with that affliction, she lived outside of her means. At one point in the series, while struggling to find an apartment, she realized in horror that she had spent $40,000 on shoes in the past few years. Eventually, Carrie would find a higher-paying job and everything would work out for her. But she really was not doing well financially for a stretch. To the show's credit, Sex and the City really did do a great job of demonstrating the glamour of life in the big city, as well as its cost. Dewey Finn from School of Rock. Winning a Battle of the Bands competition should never be a part of a sound financial portfolio. Neither should pretending to be a substitute teacher so that you can make some fast cash and form a band out of 10-year-old students. Even if Dewey Finn did avoid abject poverty and raise the spirits of a group of kids, he did some pretty shady stuff along the way. School of Rock still holds up as a fantastic and thoroughly entertaining movie, but you really shouldn't take any financial advice from the film. Also, Sarah Silverman's character was completely right. It's totally okay to kick your friend out if they've been living on your couch indefinitely without ever paying rent. Ben Stone from Knocked Up. Name a single lead character in a Judd Apatow movie who's great with money. Okay, besides the guy from 40-Year-Old Virgin who put all his money into action figures. The point is, Seth Rogen's Ben Stone is not great with money, even if his government injury settlements do allow him to live passably. Him getting a job as a web designer and finding his own apartment over the course of a single montage also isn't very accurate. It is way tougher to live and work in Los Angeles than that. If there's just one bit of financial advice to be taken from Knocked Up, it's that you should always make sure your money-making scheme is an original idea. Don Draper from Mad Men. Just because somebody has a lot of money doesn't mean they're good with it. Case in point, Don Draper from Mad Men. While a lot of his poor financial decisions come from some underlying misogyny, his worst spending habits come from misplaced good intentions. Like the time he gave his wife Megan a giant prop check as a means of an apology. Or that time he just gave a kid his car. No matter how much money you have, these aren't smart or healthy decisions. Sure, Don isn't going broke anytime soon, but if he didn't have a stolen identity to fall back on, he easily could. If only we could all be so lucky. Well, what do you think of our list of some of the richest and poorest characters in television and film? Did we miss anyone? Let us know in the comments down below. And while you're there, be sure to like this video and subscribe to The Binger.